Hello, and my name is Pete Rushmer, and I'm your host today of A Half Dozen Things podcast. A Half Dozen Things is a podcast for business owners just like you. Whether you're an underdog hungry for success, or you're already smashing it but want to continue to level up, we are here each week for you to get insight and learning from the very best in the business. No fluff, no BS, and no self-proclaimed gurus talking about how easy business or life is.
Hello and welcome to today's podcast. Today I'm talking about how you can build your influence at work. And this is something that I've noticed would be really worthwhile for a lot of the transport managers that listen and watch my podcast, whether it's on YouTube or on the podcast channels. I think the influence is something that is massively underrated in the transport sector, and the more influence that you can have in a workplace, the better performance you may be able to instill in your team and the better outcomes you can have as well. Influence can be far ranging in your business and really can help support compliance, and it can help people listen to your ideas, and it will help make those outcomes even better for you as well. As a transport manager, it's really important to have a good level of influence from a 360 point of view. And what do I mean by that? Well, from an upwards point of view, it's very important to have influence, particularly with your line managers, with the company owners or directors, depending on the size of the company you're working for, and to be able to influence them to invest, for them to give time for team members and for drivers, for them to value compliance and to value what you bring to the business. So influence from that point of view is really important when you think about managing upwards in your position as a transport manager or as a transport owner. It's massively important. And then the next thing to think about is actually managing across. So are your peers, people that you're working with, are the planners, are the people around you, as well as the workshops that you work with, people who are maintaining your vehicle, are you able to influence them? Do they understand you when you say to them how important it is for you to get 100% MOT pass rate, or for you to ensure there are no failures? How can you influence them to perform better, to help you support in your role and to help maintain a great level of compliance in your business? And then the other thing to consider is obviously managing people who work on your behalf, those at the coalface, drivers, or other people in your business that you may be leading, that you're influencing as part of their work. How do you get them to follow the safe systems of work that you've set out? How do you get them to follow the safe processes? How do you get them to ensure that they do walk around checks correctly? So influence is a really big part of what we do as transport managers, and it's a really important skill to have. So in this session, I'm going to give you 6 areas where you can help to build that influence. I hope that they'll be useful, and I hope that it will just get you to think about how much influence you have currently. And if you've ever said, oh God, I can't influence that decision, or I can't, it's not going my way. Well, sometimes it's good to sort of reflect on yourself and think about how well you're managing, how well are you communicating what it is you need, and how well are you influencing those around you. It's very difficult to get influence at the moment. People are massively overloaded with information. People are constantly being bombarded with what you're telling them, with what other people are telling them. So how do you make sure that your information is really what's taken on board and really what is implemented? Certainly, like I say, it's important from a 360 point of view for you as a transport manager, as a transport professional, that you have both all areas of stakeholders getting on board with what it is you're saying. So the first area where you can help build influence is to build connections. Okay, so the first thing is to build connections, and it's really important that essentially it's to build people that like you, build connection with people, and if people like you and engage with you, and you have fun with them, and you can have a laugh with them, for example, then you can more easily influence them because the relationship's rewarding for them. So how can you, I suppose the thing to reflect on there is, how can you better connect with those around you? And hopefully by implementing some of the other tips, that will help support that too. but think about how you can connect better with people. How can you get a better relationship with them? How can you get them to like you is the first step, but also to obviously give you respect as well and give you the time that you need. So often being able to articulate yourself and explain why things are important is obviously a really good start. The second key area, and I think we'll come back to that around building connections with people, because I think the other areas that we focus on will help to promote good connections with other people. So the second key is about listening to people before you try to persuade them. I had a situation the other day where a team member of a place where I was working, they were unhappy with some of the health and safety things that were happening around them. They were unhappy with people wearing high vis, not wearing their high vises, driving in areas where there shouldn't be vehicles, causing it to be unsafe. And essentially, before I jumped into solution mode, and I see this a lot of the time, particularly in Facebook groups with transport managers, our intention is to try and help. It's to try and fix things and to try and solve problems. And sometimes we need to just listen a little better to understand a little more about why the challenge is being raised or what's really happening. And it takes time to really listen to people, because actually, if people don't feel listened to, that can create resentment. Okay, so one of the things that I've found in my career is that more than anything else, the most important thing for people is to be understood, and for you to demonstrate that you really understand someone, you understand where they're coming from. Whether that is one of the leaders in the business when they ask you to do something, if you really demonstrate you understand and why that's needed, then that will help build rapport. It will help build a relationship with those people, in the same way that if you understand what challenges people are facing, that they're trying to overcome. If you really listen carefully, you'll be able to better understand their needs. And then if you better understand their needs, then you can help influence behavior, help influence outcomes a lot more, because you really, really understand where they are, where their challenges are. So a really good example, like I was saying before, was people not following the safety rules with high vises and vehicles moving. I took the time to really think and listen to that person without making any suggestions, and then was asking them, how do you think we overcome it? How do we overcome this situation? How can we get people to sort of follow the rules better? And actually, the suggestions that came back from that person were far better than the suggestions I could have come up with. And actually, he'd have probably thought, if I'd have just bowled in with suggestions, he'd have gone, well, actually, I wouldn't do it like that. I'd do it like this. But the benefit of me taking the time to listen and then ask the questions of what the suggested improvement is actually, it's much more likely to take place, because we're going with their suggestions. We're going with that person's suggestions to make it better. Actually, they've got the answers. And that's a far better place to be in, when you've got people who are raising challenges, but also raising their own suggestions. Because then when that hasn't worked, you can work with them to understand why that hasn't worked. Okay, cool. So that was the second area, about listening, making sure we really, really listen before we try to persuade people or try to tell people anything. We really need to listen to what push factors they're having to try and overcome. So the third area was about minding your body language and understanding the tone of voice that you use. This actually comes up in one of the driver CPC courses that I've written, about how important body language is, and what we call NVCs, non-verbal communications. So body language is absolutely critical. There's an old sociologist from years and years and years ago who did a study and reckoned that actually 55% of all communication face-to-face with people is received by the body language that someone uses. So if you have for you to try and motivate somebody to do something, if you've got a slumped posture yourself, or if you can't look them in the eye, or if you can't give them, show or demonstrate that your confidence in what you're saying, then actually what you're saying is not going to be very well received at all. So the tone with which you say something and the manner in which you say it is often more important than the words that you're actually articulating.
Hi, it's Pete from Flagship Partners. We're really proud to sponsor a Half Dozen Things podcast. At Flagship Partners, we take road safety really seriously, and we're your road safety partnership. We help transport companies with compliance and training across their businesses, including first aid, driver CPC, and other transport management services. So if you're FORS accredited or you want to improve your operator compliance risk score, give Flagship Partners a call today.
Hopefully I'm demonstrating that and I'm living that in the way that I'm providing you this video. I'm using hand movements to try and illustrate my points. I'm trying to keep eye contact with the camera to demonstrate to you and to really sort of live that, how important communication is and how important body language is. For example, if I stood up over you and was overbearing on people, then people can find that much less influential than people who are at their level, communicating in a way that they completely understand. Cool. So that's the first three things then. So what's coming up fourth? The fourth is about developing expertise. Now, as transport managers, we're pretty good at this, right? Because we've had to pass the exam. The exam is not easy to pass. And over time, we develop expertise that we better understand the business. There's something that really, really downplays people's influence if they are deemed to not really understand or to talk about things that they don't really feel that they are fully engaged with or fully interested in. So it's really, really important that you really work on your own skills to be able to speak to people. And if you know better than they do, then don't lord that over them, but always listen to other people and listen and help learn and help develop, because sometimes you don't need to be the smartest person in the room. Sometimes you just need to have the best suggestions or the most influence. And a lot of people will not necessarily, it won't matter to them so much your level of expertise, but particularly with compliance, it's really, really important that we are able to be experts at what we do and we really, really understand the different systems that we need and the different mechanisms and why they're important. Okay, so the fifth area is about mapping a strategy. So one of the things that's really, really important is to make sure that you have a good understanding of what strategy you're going to use to try and influence an outcome. So think about what it is that another person needs and what they want, and then be strategic about how you look at your outcomes and you look at how you can marry those two together. Because if you can find a good partnership between what it is you want and what the other person needs, if you can marry those two things up, you're much more likely to get a positive outcome, and that will really build the influence that you have with somebody, because they're going to really get on board. The uptake on what you're suggesting is really going to help support them. If it helps support them too, if it helps them create a better outcome for themselves, because everybody is led by themselves and what's good for them as well. So people are going to be much more likely to get on board if you can really, first of all, take that second suggestion around listening and then have a strategy to be able to marry up about how they can get what they want, whilst you get what you need as well. Cool. So, and that's kind of leads us on to the sixth area really nicely, about how you find that strategy and really consider, particularly if something's challenging, the strategy you're going to implement. The sixth thing's really, really simple, is give people what they want. So you can really, really increase your influence with people if you give them what you want. To be able to give them what they want, you need to know what they want or understand what they want. So don't be making assumptions. You need to make sure you implement that skill of listening. Think about from other people's point of view. This is where empathy really comes in. Having empathy, where you really, really understand someone else's point of view, you can start to think, what's in it for me, as in them? What is in it for them? And as you start to do that a lot more, you'll come up against a lot less friction when you're trying to push through ideas or you're trying to improve things or make change, because people will often find excuses when you try to change things. They'll often try and push back on you, for example. But actually, if you can think about what's in it for them, you can mitigate any challenges that they may have. Really think about what their challenges are going to be and try and make sure you come up with solutions to those objections as you try to build your influence with those people. So those are the 6 areas. Let me just sort of have a bit of a roll back through those. So building connections is the first thing, making sure people like you, making sure you can help influence them by the way that they like you and obviously want to get along with you. The next thing, really key one, second one, is to listen before trying to engage, before trying to persuade people. Really listen to what their situation is and have that key word, which is empathy, to try and understand their position. Third one is to mind your body language. So understand what you're communicating, not just by what you're saying, but the tone of voice that you're using and the non-verbal communication or body language that you're implementing. Start to have a look at those things. Have a look and understand body language. Look at really influential people like Barack Obama, people who are really good speakers, and understand how their body language and how they're using their body to help convey their message in a positive way and build influence with people. The fourth area was developing expertise. So making sure that you don't necessarily need to be the expert in the room on anything, but really understand and try to understand what other people know your own ability and know what you know, and really just make sure that you understand the importance of having the right expertise. The fifth area is around strategy and making sure that you understand what other people need and what it is that you're trying to achieve, and mapping that strategy out, understanding what route you're going to take, because you can build the picture and then really go in for influencing the outcomes that you want. And the final tip is to give people what they want. Understand what others want. You need to have done that by listening. You need to have built rapport with people and have empathy with them to be able to influence them. And then once you know what people want, you can align that with your own goals and outcomes that you need to achieve to do what you need to do to have a safe operation, whatever that may look like. So simple things to remember, simple do's. Cultivate your personal connections with people. Make it clear to people that you value their opinions. Make sure that you take steps to develop expertise. Make sure you demonstrate that you're committed to learning and to learn better and be better at what you do as well. That will help build your influence with people. Don't think that your attempts to sway people are manipulative, because you're being strategic. You're trying to get outcomes that are good for everybody, because actually the outcomes you want are good for other people too. And if they're not good for other people, then you may be in the wrong job anyway, because actually what we do, we're compliance professionals. We're trying to make sure that things are done for the greater good. So don't worry about manipulating, because it isn't really. You're being strategic to try and get what you want for the greater good of everyone else. The other thing to make sure that you don't slouch when you talk. Don't shout at people. Don't be too commanding when you're trying to build influence with people. They're really bad strategies. Listen, speak softly, build influence. And the final one is don't use I too much. Hopefully throughout this podcast, I won't have used I, or maybe I have, but not too much. We talk about we, you, talk about what's in it for them, understand what they need, and speak about them rather than what you need, because people don't give a fuck what you want. People don't give a fuck what you need. They really care about themselves and they really care about what's good for them. So the best way to build influence is to really care about them too, and to suggest how what you are doing is best for them too. Okay. Hopefully that has been a whistle stop tour of trying to build influence, or looking to build influence in your business and in your professional life. I could do all day on this, and so obviously we don't have time for that, but there are 6 quick steps. If you've got any other suggestions yourself, I'd love to hear them. Please do drop them in the comments and share them with me. Share this on social media if you found it useful. Take care and speak to you soon. Bye-bye.
I really hope you loved today's episode, and if you did, please make sure you subscribe and listen out for future episodes too. Please do share it across your social media channels. We hope to reach more and help more people. If you want to find out more about me, my name's Pete Rushmer. You'll find me across any social media channel and my business Flagship Partners, and we're your partners in success across your business. Thank you. See you again soon.